Hello there, I'm Hong-Zhi. I'm gonna talk a bit about Miis. So, I've recently taken a bit more interest in Mario Super Sluggers after talking with some people over on the Mario Baseball Club Discord, trying to push it a little more as a competitive esport, since it honestly gets a bit too much of a bad rap in the community. And so, I thought I'd talk about Miis. Miis are probably my favorite characters in Mario Super Sluggers. They're very, very powerful in a not very obvious way. And so that makes them really fun to talk about and really fun to use. And so I thought I'd throw together like a little tier list going over which Mii colors are the best, what makes Miis so strong to begin with, and sort of how each of the different colors of Miis plays out. So for starters, what makes Miis so strong? For the first thing that you should know is that Miis are the only characters in the game who are infinitely replaceable. What does that mean? That means that you can take any number of Miis at any time and it's impossible to hate draft them. So say for instance I really want to get a dark green Mii on my team. But my opponent, wants to make sure I don't get a dark green Mii, so they take the only dark green Mii on the console. The counterplay to this is you go to the Mii channel and create another dark green Mii, and all of a sudden you have another dark green Mii that you can take for your team. Your opponent hate drafts that one, you can make another one, etc., etc. So it's impossible to stop someone from taking a Mii if they really want one, and that's very powerful. A lot of the best characters in the game, like Petey Piranha, or King K. Rool, or King Boo, or Daisy, or Yoshi, a lot of the counterplay to them is you take them so your opponent can't take them. But when you have the ability to just say, okay, you can't do that, that makes a character a lot more powerful. It's part of why color palette characters are so strong in this game, because it's almost impossible to stop someone from taking one of the palettes of that character. Though in some cases, you can stop them from taking the best palette, and that will screw with them. But more on that later. So, with Miis, they're infinitely replaceable characters. But that wouldn't mean very much if they weren't good to begin with. And Miis are actually very good. They have solid hitting. They have a good star swing. It's a line drive that causes the fielder to bobble. They have above average running. They are 6 out of 10, which is actually better than a lot of the cast. And overall, they have really good stats. But what really catapults them to high tier status are two things. First off, Miis are female. And you might not think that matters, but Peach's star swing in this game causes male characters to basically be stunned, and it's almost impossible to catch it. You can, barely etch out a catch with Magikoopa's magical catch, but everyone else, you're not getting that ball. But with female characters, they're completely immune to it, and so it goes from Peach having, one of the best star swings in the game to one of the worst, and I actually realized I forgot the pink Mii color. And that's obviously huge, taking a character from being elite in something to sucking. More importantly, Miis have massive chemistry trees. And they're really weird chemistry trees, too. Because the way Mii's chemistries work is that they have chemistry depending on which character is which color. So, for instance, let's take Purple, for example. So, the purple characters in this game are Waluigi and Purple Toad. If you don't use Miis, it's literally impossible to link these two characters together, because Wario and Waluigi, they only have chemistry with each other. They don't have chemistry with any other characters in the game. But with Miis, you can just go Waluigi, Purple Mii, Purple Toad. And it's an impossible to hate draft link. It's almost like Waluigi and Purple Toad just have the chemistry connection in and of themselves. And considering Miis already have very good stats, this leads to a lot of very game-breaking scenarios, depending on the different colors. So I'm going to start with what is probably the best Mii color in the game, just because I think it gives a very good example of what I'm talking about when I say Mii colors are broken, and that's Red Mii. So Red Mii is actually the Mii color with the most chemistry links, 13. And let me see if I can recite all of them off the top of my head. Mario, Baby Mario, Red Pianta, Red Critter, Red Noki, Red Shy Guy, Red Koopa, Red Paratroopa, Dark Bones, Red Yoshi, Red Toad, Fire Bro, and Red Magikarp. That's a lot of characters, as you can see. And the big one that's like super good is Red Critter. Red Critter is the best critter variant in the game. He has the best hitting. He's just all around the best character of the critters. And the ability for Red Critter, like, usually what holds the critters back is that their chemistry, they only have chem with K-Rool. They don't have any other chem partners. But having those Miis just makes them so easy to link into. You can go, like, Mario, Red Mii, Red Critter, Pianta, Red Mii, Red Critter, Fire Bro, Magikoopa. There's a lot of really good stuff that you can do with Red. And basically, if you need to get, like, from one part of the chem tree to another, chances are the fastest way to do that is just using a Red Mii. They're really that good. On top of that, like, that Mario chemistry connection, which I kind of brushed over earlier, is really good. One of the best outfields in the entire game is Mario, Yoshi, Mii. And with Red Mii, you can put Red Mii in corner outfield, Yoshi in the other corner, and Mario in center field. And with that, you have a perfect buddy jump core of fast characters playing outfield. It's a really strong color. And then there's all sorts of other stuff. Like, this color is so good that usually you don't take male Miis because female Miis have that Peach immunity, which is very important. But with Red Mii, sometimes it's actually in your best interest to take female Red Mii, male Red Mii, just so they have the chem with each other, because that's the only advantage that male Miis have over female Miis, is that they have chemistry with female Miis. So, like, yeah, Red's a really good color. Gets you to a lot of parts of the chem tree, gets you to the best critter variant, who in turn gets you to K-Rool, who's one of the best characters in the game. And there's all sorts of other stuff that you can do with it. I didn't even mention Red Filler, which is literally just taking two Red Miis and then a red character who's really good. Usually you go with Pianta, Dark Bones, or Fire Bro are usually the red fillers, but because like Mario usually has better connections, and then Critter's always on the K-Rool team. Though you can do red filler strats with Red Critter to hate draft it from the K-Rool team, but more on that later. Overall, really, really strong color. So there's gonna be one other color I'm gonna put in S, and if you're not too familiar with the meta of Mii colors, you're gonna be really surprised by this because it's not a color you'd expect. And that color is actually light green. So light green, the reason why you might not expect it if you're not too familiar with the Mii meta, is it only gets two characters, Yoshi and Petey Piranha. The thing is, Yoshi and Petey Piranha are the best characters in the game. Like, by a lot. Having the ability to link the two best characters into the game into each other is massive. You go, like, sure, Birdo does the same thing. But Birdo's not infinitely replaceable. And Birdo's actually a worse character overall than the Miis. She has a little bit more power and suction, but suction's not very good in this game. And that power benefit comes at the cost of consistency. The Miis are much better at getting on base than Birdo is, and she's slower. So I think overall, the Miis are actually better characters than Birdo is. So I'd actually rank light green as, on some days, I actually consider it the best color in the game. Just because guaranteeing that one link is so incredibly powerful that it almost warps the entire format around it. But ultimately, I feel like the versatility of Red is probably a little better, though this is always very subject to change, and I do change my mind on this very frequently. One last thing to note is that, sort of like Red Mii, you can do the Yoshi, Mario, Mii outfield, only with Yoshi in center field, which is probably a little better because Yoshi runs the fastest, and so he'll be more likely to get to corner outfield buddy jumps. So that does it for S tier. As you can tell, both of these colors warp the game around them, and very influential on how you end up building teams. There's one more color that's very, very strong that we're going to talk about, and that color is yellow. It's not quite S tier. I'm going to put it in A tier, But the thing with red is that, sure, it gets you to almost the entire chemistry tree, but it misses out on a few very key parts. So the biggest, and probably the biggest example of which is the PD friend group, which is PD Piranha, King Boo, Blooper, Wiggler. None of those characters link into red characters. You have King Boo, who is white, and Blooper and Boo, they're all white characters. Like, white doesn't get you to very much. It gets you to normal Dry Bones, who in turn actually doesn't link into very much himself. So you're still kind of trapped there. And while I said that light green was a very powerful color, and that light green Mii is one of the best characters in the game, it just gets those two characters, so you're very limited on what you can do after, if you've already taken Yoshi, or you can't get Yoshi, because Yoshi and PD are on different teams. But Yellow actually solves those problems very handily through Wiggler. Wiggler's yellow is just a very valuable color. You get to a lot of very prime characters with this. Some of the more notable ones, the most notable one, I should say, is Magikoopa. This is actually way better than the red Magikoopa link. Partially because I think Yellow Mag is actually the better character between the two, but also because most of the time, like, when you have the red links going on, you can usually get to some pitching. It's a lot harder to do that when you're in the PD friend group. You get, like, King Boo, and then you really often don't want to take Boo, because Boo's not that great a character. So, being able to go Wiggler, Yellow Mii, Yellow Mag, and then Yellow Mag in turn gets you to all those villain characters, like Bowser Jr., Fire Bro, Hammer Bro, a lot of very strong characters overall. It's a very strong color for that purpose. Other than that, the other big thing you get out of Yellow is Wario. Wario is not, like, the best character on his own, but Waluigi is very, very good. He's one of the best pitchers in the game. Really only held back by the fact that his chemistry tree is so limiting. If you take Wiggler, then you have Yellow Mii, then Wario, Waluigi. Have Waluigi be your link breaker. And by link breaker, for those of you who are not super familiar with Sluggers terminology, I mean the character that ends your chemistry chain. Usually you can't do, like, the full, every one of my characters links into another one. You usually have to drop one item in your batting lineup. I call that character the link breaker, because they break your chemistry link. So have Waluigi act as your link breaker. You don't need to go Purple Mii, Purple Toad. You can just have him stop your chemistry line. And you end up with one of the best pitchers in the game, an okay-ish hitter, and then the PD friend group stuff. And then from there, you can go light green Mii into Yoshi, or Birdo into Daisy. All sorts of stuff you can do that's very strong. So these three Miis see a lot of competitive play. I'd say if you're building serious teams, it's impossible to play a match where, like, one of these colors doesn't go. And oftentimes, two of these colors will end up going. And in certain scenarios, actually, all three of these colors end up playing a part. Like, for instance, if you have PD Yoshi, Wiggler, Yellow Mii, like, that's something that's pretty strong. Like, doubling up on Miis is not, like, a bad strategy in the slightest. So these colors are very, very game warping. They're very powerful. The rest of the colors aren't as good, and so I'll go into a little more detail once I start talking about the lower tiers, but most of these other colors I don't really use in competitive. They are quite fun and casual, though, and I'll talk about some stuff you can do with them, even in, like, a competitive setting. But overall, like, these colors just aren't as good as these three. So I think the next best color is Dark Blue. Dark Blue is actually a pretty eclectic color from my recollection. I think it gets 9 characters, which is a lot. For reference, Yellow only gets 6. So it actually gets more characters than Yellow does. The problem is that every single one of the colors that it gets, Red gets, and Red actually gets more characters. The big one that you're missing is Mario. You really do miss that Mario link when you're Dark Blue. But also, like, your Critter variant is worse. Blue Critter's generally agreed to be the worst Critter variant. Your Pianta doesn't really matter. Red's better because he goes into Red Critter. You get a worse Magic Koopa, but like, who cares? It's like, the main thing you're missing out on is Mario. The other chem links that you drop aren't as big a deal. Like, you drop Koopa, you drop Paratroopa, you drop Baby Mario. But that Mario link drop just really holds back Dark Blue. The main thing that I think keeps Dark Blue meta relevant is hate drafting. So remember how I was talking earlier how you can do double red Mii strats with red Critter to screw over a K-Rool team? So what you can actually do in response to that is you can go Dark Blue. And oftentimes the way you end up linking into K-Rool in the first place is you go Mario Pianta, Mii, Critter, K-Rool. So instead of going red Pianta for red Critter, you can go blue Pianta for blue Critter. And your Critter variant's slightly worse, but blue Critter's still a very strong character overall. And your Pianta variant doesn't change, like they all have the same stats. And so it's just good to have that backup, I think, in competitive. The other thing that I guess is worth mentioning about blue is that red Toad is a terrible character. Like, the difference between red and green Toad and then the other three Toad variants is pretty big. I should have mentioned that with yellow as well, because yellow Toad does see a little bit of play. So if you end up wanting to use Toad to link out into something, it's actually better to use blue Toad. I wouldn't recommend taking red Toad. That's how bad I think red Toad is. But blue Toad's pretty solid. I think most of the time you're better off with going yellow strats, going either for Wiggler or Wario or Magic Koopa. But, you know, if you want to go like Toad into Critter for whatever reason, I wouldn't recommend it, but it is an option. Like, Dark Blue's like a great way to go. So moving on, I'm going to put Dark Green next in B tier. If you told me like a month ago that I would say Dark Blue is a better color than Dark Green, I would have thought you were crazy. Dark Green actually has the second most links in the game. It has 12. But sort of like with Dark Blue, every single one of the links is replicable in red, and you miss out on a couple. Like, you miss out on Mario, you miss out on Baby Mario, and I think that's it. In return, you get Luigi, K-Rool, and Baby Luigi. And like K-Rool, you never really need the link for. You have critters. Even for Dark Green, like, it's better to go green Critter, K-Rool, instead of just directly into K-Rool. Luigi's a terrible character, one of the worst characters in the game. Sadly enough, Baby Luigi's probably the most relevant of those, just because he can act as a green version of Baby Mario, who in and of himself is kind of a niche character, but he has his uses. You also miss out on Yoshi. There's a red Yoshi, but the green Yoshis count as a light green character. So Dark Green is just overall, like, pretty outclassed by red. But you'd think, well, it's 12 characters versus 9. It has to be better than Dark Blue, right? And honestly, not really, because Dark Green actually misses out on Pianta, which is huge. It means you can't go Mario, Pianta, Critter, K-Rool. You have to go... most of the time you're going to go Mario Noki, Mii, Critter, K-Rool, which Noki is not nearly as good a character as Pianta. Noki's not bad, but Pianta she is not. And other than Noki, like, which by the way, you don't have Noki over Blue. Blue can do the same thing. Like, the characters you gain over Blue are Baby Luigi, K-Rool, Luigi, and oh god, what's the last color variant you get? Luigi, K-Rool, Koopa, Paratroopa, my bad. And Baby Luigi. Like, none of those characters are really very good. They're all kind of bad characters, so... Overall, Dark Blue is just a lot more useful as a backup, because you do have that blue Pianta. That's not to say Dark Green can't be a backup, it's just not as strong. So moving on, we're going to talk about the color that I used to think very highly of, but has since kind of fallen off the meta, and that's pink. Pink gets 6 characters. The problem is that 5 of them are pretty much already have chemistry, so what's the point of Pink Mii? And those 5 characters are Birdo, Pink Yoshi, Baby Peach, Peach, and Toadette. Of those, I think the only ones that don't have chemistry are Yoshi doesn't have chemistry with Peach and Baby Peach. No, Yoshi doesn't have chemistry with Peach and Toadette, and Peach doesn't have chemistry with Baby Peach. Everyone else just has chemistry with each other already. I guess Birdo and Baby Peach don't have chemistry either. But, like, everyone else already has chemistry, and even if they didn't, they're only one link away from that chemistry, and oftentimes you have multiple ways of getting to that link away in chemistry, and none of those characters are really worth going out of your way for. Birdo is usually, you want her for her chemistry tree, so the Mii is kind of just a bonus. Pink Yoshi's a great character, but usually not one that even gets picked. Peach is mostly used for a chemistry tree like Birdo. Baby Peach is usually a link breaker, just because it's kind of hard to go somewhere from there, and then Toadette's just not very good. The main use for Pink is actually, surprisingly enough, with Kongs. The best way to link into Kongs is go Pink Me Dixie Kong. And the reason why that's the best way to go into Kongs is because Kongs suck at a lot of things, but one of the big things they really suck at is their pitching is just awful. So the ability to go like Daisy Peach, Pink Me, Dixie Kong, and then take whatever Kongs you want, like, that's pretty much what keeps Kongs from being complete doo-doo, unplayable garbage. And so Dixie Kong obviously doesn't have chemistry with any of those characters, so sometimes it's just nice to do that. You can also do like a Pink Me Dixie Kong. Usually Birdo is the buddy jump outfield you go for. Yeah, like, it's just a Kong color, but Kongs are pretty bad anyway, so yeah, even if you're like trying to build like a really optimal Pink Me team, it's usually better to go like Birdo, Toadette, Toad, because I think Toadette's a better character than Dixie Kong. And then Toad versus Mii, I think, is actually pretty even in terms of raw stats. But I just don't think Dixie Kong's super great outside of her ability to link into other Kongs. And on a similar note, Brown is another color that doesn't really see play outside of Kongs. Though, unlike with Pink, where everyone else in the chemistry group already has chemistry with each other, so it doesn't help that much. Brown, the problem is that everyone in the chemistry group sucks. And it's a huge chemistry group. It's 7 characters. But those 7 characters are Goomba, who sucks, Paragoomba, who sucks, Monty Mole, who's one of the worst characters in the game, Baby DK, who's one of the worst characters in the game, Toadsworth, who is debatably the worst character in the entire game, Brown Critter, and Donkey Kong. So basically you get a Brown Critter Donkey Kong link. Brown Critter is admittedly one of the better Critter variants, but because you only get into him through Donkey Kong, you never see him. And Donkey Kong in and of himself isn't really a great character. He's held back by the fact that his Star Swing is just not very good. There's tons of counterplay to it. You just pop the ball up and then catch it by diving into the barrel. But like, if you want to go Kongs, this is pretty much the only reason you do it, just to do that Pink Me, Brown Critter, Gambit stuff. It's a fun casual combo. I wouldn't really play it in competitive, though. So that does it for B tier. These are mostly, like, somewhat competitive, just outclassed by the top 3. C tier is going to change that. These are going to be colors that aren't really very competitive at all. Maybe have a niche use here or there. And I think I'm going to start with purple. So, like I said, Waluigi's a very good character, and being able to get to Waluigi is pretty nice. That's part of why yellow's so strong. But purple is just less good at doing that. You get purple Toad and that's it, whereas yellow gets you Wiggler, Magikoopa, Pianta, and Yoshi in addition to the Toad. And that's the only thing you're really getting out of purple is that Waluigi link in. It's not the worst in the world. There are times where like people hate draft Wario when you take Waluigi first. And it's in that case it's nice to have the backdoor exit to be able to like build a competent team, but overall it's just not a very competitive color. It's just too narrow. You're not going to use it. White is another color you really don't see a lot of. I used to think pretty highly of white, but I've soured on it pretty hard. Blooper, King Boo, and Boo already pretty much have chemistry with each other. And other than that, you just get normal Dry Bones. And normal Dry Bones is just... he doesn't have any chemistry partners, really. He has Bowser and Koopa, both of whom are pretty bad characters. So you don't really get much out of that link out option unless you're literally just trying to end the draft in 2 picks and you happen to like end on like King Boo or something. You're usually not going to use it. The main use I've actually found for it is I didn't mention this with yellow, but Wiggler, Blooper, Yellow Me is a pretty strong outfield. You often end up going it, just sometimes. And White Me can actually do the same thing with Blooper, Wiggler, and White Me. It's not as strong because White Me's not really getting you anywhere. You're probably just gonna end up taking like King Boo and linking Blooper into King Boo, who they already have chemistry to begin with, so it's not very good. But it is technically something you can do with White, which is more than I can really say with the rest of the colors. The rest of the colors, I guess. Do I want to put orange in C? I'm gonna put orange in D. Orange is a really bad color. So orange would be spectacular because it gets Daisy. Daisy's one of the best characters in the game, but her big holding back point is that her chemistry tree is really limited. She gets Luigi, who's basically not a character, Peach, and Birdo. And so oftentimes, like, the main thing that hamstrings players taking Daisy is they either have to use her as a link breaker, which she's a pretty good link breaker, admittedly, or you have to take Peach and Birdo, which isn't always the easiest thing to do when there's so many good characters in the game. So you'd think, oh, well, why not use Orange Me to backdoor my way into a better character? And the answer is because you can't. The only other orange character in the game is Baby Daisy. Baby Daisy is one of the worst characters in the game. She's strictly worse than the Mii in every stat. She's pretty bad at hitting. She's not... Her throwing arm isn't very good. Her pitching isn't even very good. So, like, you don't really have... Like, your backdoor is throwing away 2 picks on what is essentially 2 nothings of characters. Which, at that point, honestly, I'd say take I'd go 7 chem links. If you're in that desperate a position, I'd just go 7 chem links. These last 2 colors are really, really bad, though. I think orange is worse enough than purple and white to where I'm going to leave it in D tier, but these 2 might be like a tier below orange, because they are really bad. Which is worse? I'm going to say light blue is better between the 2, though it's hard to say. Light blue is the only color in the entire game that does not get a single good character. Every other color I talked about so far has that character where you're like, ooh, I can build around this. Red has Mario and Critter, light green has Petey and Yoshi, yellow is Wiggler and Magikoopa, blue has Critter, green is Critter, pink has Dixie Kong, brown is Brown Critter, purple is Waluigi, white with King Boo, orange with Daisy, even black gets Bowser Jr., who's a pretty good character. Light blue gets 3 characters, Funky Kong, Tiny Kong, and Light Blue Yoshi. Funky Kong is, like, mediocre. Funky Kong's not a character you should be going out of your way for. And then Tiny Kong and Light Blue Yoshi are just straight up awful. You would never take them unless you were specifically going for Light Blue Mii strats. Being able to go colored Yoshi into Funky Kong is not even, like, a big draw, because you're essentially throwing away 2 picks for an average at best character, which is really not where you want to be. I guess it is an alternate route into that Kong chemistry group. Like, instead of going like Birdo, Pink, Mii, Dixie, you go Birdo, Light Green, Light Blue Yoshi, Mii, Funky. But it's like, either way, you're throwing away 2 team slots, and one of them just uses up less characters. So, overall, light blue just doesn't get you anything. Which is more than I can say for black. Bowser Jr. is not a Daisy tier character. Bowser Jr. is a good character for sure, but he's of, like, the Bowser core characters, you know, Bowser, Dry Bones, Hammer Bro, Bowser Jr., Magikoopa. He's probably, like, the 3rd best. I'd prefer both Magikoopa and Hammer Bro on most teams. So it's like, he's not even someone you really want to go out of your way for. Even if you did, like, there's nothing wrong with going, like, Magikoopa Bowser Jr. or Fire Bro Bowser Jr. And, like, you don't get anything out of it. The only characters you get are Bowser, who, first off, Bowser sucks. But secondly, like, you already have the Bowser Jr. link. That's not getting you anywhere. And Gray Shy Guy, Black Shy Guy, Anti Guy, whatever you want to call him. He's not very good either. He's one of the worst characters in the game. Usually when you take him, you're doing some weird Birdo Boo strat where you're trying to link into K. Rool without Miis, which there's no reason to do anyway, but it's a strat, theoretically. So yeah, black's just an awful color. Like, at least with light blue, I can theory craft why you'd use it. With black, it's like Bowser Jr. and two awful characters. And it's not even like the awful characters are desperate for those links like Orange is with Daisy. Like, Bowser Jr. has plenty of good links. So there's my Mario Super Sluggers color tier list. I hope maybe you learned something about the colors in this game and sort of why or why not they work so well. But yeah, that is my Miis Sluggers tier list. I just spent 30 minutes talking about this nonsense, and I hope you'll tune into whatever I make next. Peace.